Hello students, my name is Dean Smith and I'm going to be your drawing instructor for the semester. We will start off with this short video on a few tips and tricks on your materials. I won't be covering everything. A lot of these things I'd like to cover when we get to the projects and their specific uses, but there are just a few things that you should know before we begin. Okay, so the first thing that we should talk about is your paper. You're going to be working on a 18 by 24 inch Strathmore drawing paper. It could be the brown one, or sometimes they come with the green cover, which is the recycled version. I actually prefer the one with the brown cover because it has a bit of a creamier colored paper. But you use whatever you wish. It doesn't really matter. There's a couple of erasers that I want you to take note of. This is the Staedtler Mars Plastic Eraser. They do have some off-brand versions of this, but this is going to be your go-to tool for working in charcoal. When you use charcoal, this thing acts as a chisel, and it really takes the charcoal off the page. When you're using graphite, mine's kind of beat up here, but this is the Faber-Castell dust-free eraser. It's magic for using graphite. It really takes it off the page. For pencils, you have a few graphite pencils I know that you've picked up, and you can tell they're graphite because they have a shiny metallic sheen on the point. Unlike your charcoal pencils, I like to keep mine wrapped up because these things are kind of fragile. If you drop them from any height, they can get broken. They can get serrated on the inside, little broken pieces, and then the tip will keep falling out. So it's a good idea when you get your charcoal pencils, keep them wrapped up in bubble wrap. And you can tell that they're charcoal because they have that very matte and black sort of lead that's inside of them, where these ones are shiny and more metallic looking. So that's the difference between those. And also you'll notice that your pencils have a number rating on them. And that number rating works like this. Go ahead and open this up. And you can see here, hopefully you can see, HB is basically, if you thought of this as a number line, so positive and negative numbers that you would look at in math, HB would basically be your zero. It's considered the 0 point. In fact, it's actually the number 2 pencil that you use when you're taking bubble exams in classes, the sort of standard pencil. Now, as you go in this direction, we have B, 2B, 3B, 4B. The numbers just keep getting larger. And the further we go in this direction, the softer the lead becomes, and therefore the darker it will make marks. Just think of it as being melty, like ice cream. The graphite just comes off, or charcoal, it's much softer, and it just makes a lot more dark on your page. And an easy way to remember that is B is bold. So the bigger the B, the bolder the pencil. In this direction, we go the opposite. There is an F in here. It stands for a person's name, the person that came up with this system, but I always kind of found it confusing because it's just kind of tucked here between the HB and the H. However, it goes F, then we have H or 1H, 2H, 3H, 4H, 5H, etc. Those numbers just keep getting higher. And the further you go in this direction, away from 0, the harder and lighter those leads become. Now, these pencils are really good for starting a drawing. If you keep a very light hand, they can make very small marks on the page in which you can just continually work up upon. So these are typically the ones that you start with, and then these are the ones that you start going to when you start building up bold shadows and that sort of thing. But whatever it is, you always want to start with a light hand. These, because they're so hard, they tend... Hold on a second. Hey, Ozzy, I'm in the middle of recording a video. Let me get back to you. Bye. So the further you go in this direction, the harder they go, and so those hard pencil leads can really actually damage the surface of your paper. Like a fingernail, if you just pushed it in really hard, you'd create these little grooves. Those hard pencil leads can create hard grooves into your paper. So you always want to try to keep a light hand when you're starting out, and especially if you're using pencils with a high H number. In fact, kind of float it above the page. Get used to holding your pencil further back, like so, instead of right here at the tip. If you hold it at the tip, it becomes, a lot more pressure on the point. If you hold it back here, the pencil has a lot less leverage, and you're less likely to damage the paper. Additionally, you should have some kind of pencil sharpener. The type you have doesn't really matter to me. Just something that you can keep your pencil sharp. I also ask you to get one of these breakaway utility knives. I find these very invaluable in art making or just any kind of projects around your home. I have several. For one, you can use them as a pencil sharpener if you want to be very, delicate and take the shavings off the tip of your pencil. You can use one of these. And the magic of these is they always stay sharp. Because of the fact that they break away, they have these little, grooves within the blade. If I ever find this getting dull, I can simply, line this up with the tip, turn it upside down, and then I crack it off, and that little dull piece comes off, and I have a whole bunch of fresh, sharp razor blade on the end. I find these superior to, say, like X-Acto blades. Those are nice maybe if you need a very, very, very sharp point, but honestly, the fact that these can continually be broken off and continually be used to be sharpened or made sharp, they're just more handy to have. Again, I just want to reiterate, your charcoals are fragile. You just don't want to get in the habit of dropping them from any distance onto the floor or treating them badly. If you have them on a desk, they're safe, but if you're going to be transporting them for any reason or whatever, like I said, I tend to suggest wrapping them up in something like bubble wrap, putting a rubber band around them, and that way they won't get broken and become useless. Let's see, any other quick things while I have them out? Of course, put these somewhere safe. You can't just toss them in your garbage sack. They should go in the recycling or something. If you do end up buying some kind of pencil box, one recommendation I have is, keeping, like, for example, all your graphites in one. And if you do, I always like to throw a little bit of just uncooked rice in there. It seems strange, but what that rice does is it picks up any of the graphite dust that would normally accumulate from these things banging around in here. And that becomes annoying because then every time you pick up a graphite pencil, there might just be graphite dust all over it and your fingers start to get really messy. That won't happen nearly as much or at all if you have loose grains of rice inside you. Now, one thing that is not required of you in this class is to have a portfolio, because we don't really have a portfolio turn-in like we normally would in an online class. But if you wish, I really recommend picking up just a simple, cheap, folding cardboard portfolio. They work like a taco. They basically have one hinge. Hopefully you can see this. It's hanging up on my light. And they just fold open. And, I'll go in and buy maybe 4 or 5 sheets of this large glassine paper, which you can then either cut in half or just fold in half. And one of these large sheets of paper basically has a very slick, waxy surface. It's a great way to store your drawings. So when you put your drawings inside the portfolio, you put the graphite side down here, then maybe you put one up this way, then you fold it this way, and then you can put another one down this way and one behind it. And it really keeps the drawings from getting smudged, from charcoal from getting everywhere. It protects them quite nicely. It's the best way to protect your work and keep it flat. You don't want a bunch of bunged up drawings that are folded and wrinkled and smudged, you want to keep them nice as soon as you're finished with them. And this is the best way to store it. I probably have, I don't know, 20 of these out in my studio filled with drawings from over the years. Super handy. And lastly, at least for now, I want to talk about the possibility of getting a drawing board. Again, this isn't required. However, I know there's going to be a bit of a trickiness from working from home. Unlike the classroom where we have a bunch of these that are available for loan, or easels, which are going to make your life 100% easier like we have in the classroom, you might find yourself having to work at a table or a desk, and this is going to be really helpful because it allows you to set your drawings up in your lap and make the drawings more vertical to your line of sight. It's that perpendicular sort of aspect of drawing is going to come in really handy. I'll talk about that more later. It's not entirely important at this point, but just know that a drawing board would be a pretty good investment if you can afford it. If not, I'm sure you could just find some board or something to work on. Metal rulers, again, this is kind of an optional thing, I believe, on the materials list. However, I find these so valuable. Like, for woodworking, for just any measuring tasks around the house, if you need to cut something, it creates a perfect straight edge. You can use your breakaway utility knife. This is one of those tools that's going to become useful to you well beyond the scope of just a drawing class. So I do recommend getting one if you can. It's just a handy tool. Let's see. And lastly, I have decided that in this class, rather than me setting up sort of still lifes and projecting them on a screen, I am going to insist that part of what you guys do as students is to create your own still lifes. And I realize that might be a little bit extra, a bit of an extra chore, but in the long run, it's going to end up benefiting you, immensely. The fact that you will have these things right in front of you and that you can draw from life is going to be very valuable. So you're just going to have to get used to going outside and finding random things, like whether it be a piece of bark, some kind of interesting plant, I don't know, maybe some goofy toy that you have around the house, or other plant life or whatever. In fact, sometimes, like for some still lifes, it might be smart to visit the Goodwill store, maybe pick up some funky looking bottles or strange colored, glassware. Things like that are going to be really valuable. So just keep that in mind. That's something that I'm going to ask you to do later in the semester. So just know that will be part of the course. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and sign off now and then start talking to you about our first assignment. Thank you.